Hello and welcome back to WD18, the Watford fan channel, brought to you by Mad Squirrel. And welcome to another very special video with Mr. Andrew French from the Watford Observer and Charlie Zazero. We'll be talking about all things the Coventry game yesterday, an unbelievable game of football, 3-3 draw where you got the real spectrum of emotions that you get as a football fan. We'll also be talking Watford's transfer window, deadline day, and a chat that Andrew had with Chris Wilder. Now, before we get into it, you may have seen on our socials this week that we are delighted to announce our first ever partnership on WD18 with Mad Squirrel, forward-thinking pub in Watford with homebrewed beer as well. Charlie, do you want to talk to us a bit more about the partnership before we kick off?
Yeah, really excited. We went down there from the Rookery Ends live show. I'm just really impressed with the place, like the different beers. It's kind of opened my eyes to like what actual nice beer is compared to going somewhere and getting, especially football grounds, when you're getting the beer they do there. But really nice craft beers, really good environment, food's good, pizza, chicken wings we had. So we spoke to those guys. They're all massive Watford fans. And basically what we're going to try and do is just make that a bit of a hub for home fans and even away fans to go to before and after games at Vicarage Road. So yeah, we're going to be doing a new video type called post-match pints. Once a month we'll go down there and film from the bar and try some of their beers. We're going to be doing some reaction, some short form reaction there. We're going to have some exclusive offers that they're going to give our followers. So should be exciting, really excited to have them on board and looking forward to working with them.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Really exciting partnership, and make sure to keep an eye out on our channels and our socials for a really exciting year ahead. Andrew, how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm very good. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Before we get into the Coventry game, what have you made the start of the season as a whole? 5 games in now. We're at the first international break. What are your immediate reactions coming off it?
I think we probably should have more points on the board. But if you don't take your chances and you make mistakes, then you are where we are. The only time I can remember us playing really badly was the first half at Stoke. I think the majority of everything else has been good. Certainly, if you compare it with last season and even the season before that, we were moaning that we had 24 shots and didn't score against Blackburn. We had 24 shots in a month and didn't score last season. So you have to, look at the positives. I think it will take time. If this really, truly is a change and a reset and everyone buys into it, and by everyone, I mean the owner, because he's the one that could buy out of it very quickly, then it will take a bit of time. I'm not writing off this season at all, but similarly, I don't think, you can expect that sort of change without a few bumps along the road. I don't think we're relegation fodder at all. It will all depend on how quickly the head coach can get his way of playing through to the players and how quickly they can make or avoid making the sort of errors that we saw yesterday.
You there, Sam?
There we go. Am I back now? Yeah, bit of a Wi-Fi hiccup there. Apologies about that. Pretty much sums up Watford at the moment, I think, there. Charlie, going on to the Coventry game yesterday, I think what we saw was the good, the bad, the ugly, and the absolutely ridiculous of what we've seen with Watford so far this season. Before we sort of dissect more the game.
Sorry, Matt, I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi. Could you repeat that? I think it's Sam's Wi-Fi. Andrew, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
I'm hoping Sam asked me about the game, but what did you think about how we lined up, Andrew? Ince got his debut, Sierralta came back in, and obviously new signing Rajovic started up front.
When I saw the team, I didn't think you could have many arguments with it. It was what, I think that most of us would have done. You'd have given Ince a start based on what you saw when he came off the bench against Blackburn. If you're going to bring a number 9 in, you may as well play him. And we've got the benefit of a number 9 who was halfway through his season anyway, so it wasn't like he was lacking in sharpness. There'll always be a bit of a shame that someone like Asprilla isn't starting. But then I think back to when João Pedro first came to the club in his first sort of 12 months, and he wasn't always a regular starter. It takes time. But I thought, I looked at that 11 and I thought, that's pretty much close to what I would have picked.
Yeah, there was a few murmurs of that when we saw the team come through. That's our best 11. So it'd be interesting to see how far that goes through. I think we should start really with defensively how we perform, because up until yesterday, we were talking about last time, we had the best kind of XG conceded against, where we were limiting chances for teams in all the previous games, and we were saying how well our defence have been playing. What do you think changed yesterday?
You know what? I think we probably made more basic errors than we have in the other games. I think that before we get onto the negatives, the one positive out of yesterday's defensive performance was it wasn't like we conceded goals because Coventry ripped us apart. We conceded goals because we basically beat ourselves. I'd have been more concerned if we'd have been under the cosh, for 75% of the game, and they got 3 because they had so many chances on goal. It wasn't like that. And while it's really, really regrettable that you see some of the errors we made, I look at that as a slight positive. So it's not like we've gone to Man City and been destroyed and you thought, well, this team's just not good enough. That's the positive out of the way. In terms of the negative, I just look back over the goals. If I remember rightly, the first one, Sierrata had done the hard bit, got the ball in midfield, won it, and then for some reason just played a nothing pass, gave the ball away, and then gives away a free kick trying to make up for his own mess. Then in terms of the free kick, the press box is right down that end, so it definitely bounced in front of the keeper, but it also travelled a long way to get there. And I think Dan would look back on that and think he probably should have done better, especially after the penalty save. But there was some suggestion it took a nick off the wall. I didn't think it did, but whatever it did, it certainly bounced in front of him. But it travelled a long way, and it was quite low down, and he was there. And I think he'll look back on that and think, yeah, I should have done that better. Goal 2, well, we could talk all night about goal 2. That's one of those ones that you want to see the other team score for you, so you can have a good old laugh. Again, being in the press box, I was sort of diagonally behind Hoyt when he got the ball. And when he turned, I thought, okay, fair enough, and he went back to the keeper. And then when I saw where Backman was, I thought, oh, this is, and you could tell straight away it was going in. The angle it was going at, that was going in. And I know people say, why didn't Dan go with his hands? But I think keepers they're so mindful that it's a back pass that it's probably ingrained in them. Either way, I don't even know if he'd have got there with his hands. It was, it was about the only place you could have put it that he didn't have it covered. It was just a downright straightforward, simple cock up. Not to detract from, I think Hoyt's been good this season. I think, that was pretty, I thought he had a reasonably good game, bar that. But obviously that will get shown. That'll be on social media and TV for years. And the shame of that was particularly the time of it, because we just scored and it sort of silenced the stadium a little bit. And you thought, okay, we can ride 15 minutes out. We're going to see this through. And it turned the game on its head, because they suddenly had got a path back into the game. The crowd lifted, and to our credit, we came back into it. But yeah, goal 2, just absolute farce. Carry on defending. Goal 3, at the time, I remember thinking, Porteous has gone down holding his face. What's that all about? Then saw the drag back. Thought it was a good finish, although I think it's disappointing that Godden's allowed to run in the box without anybody tracking him. He could have had a touch if he wanted to. He had that much space. Then after the game, you talk to Ishmael and you say you got a hand in the face. And Ishmael, he's very strong and blunt. No, it wasn't a hand, it was a fist. I've watched it, whatever replays are available. I can see the hand go in the face. What I can't tell is whether he had his fingers clenched or not. And Ishmael made the point of Porteous being, a big, hard Scottish defender who's quite tough. When it was pointed out that, it wasn't the first time in that game that he'd gone down holding his face, and he's done it 1 or 2 times before, and maybe that's a little bit of his shithouser, as he likes to call it. But it was just, I don't know. Back, I've watched football for years, and back in the day, you'd have to chop someone off at the knees to make them fall down. I don't know if he got a proper good smack in the face and it was a proper fist and he took a couple of knuckles to the eyeball, then yeah, maybe that was enough. But I can't see either way. I was too far away from it. Ishmael was closer. He said it was a fist. I'd like to think, Ryan or any other player wouldn't deliberately hit the deck for the sake of it, particularly as it led up to a goal. But again, there was elements about that, all 3 goals were extremely avoidable and cost us. You know, on another day, we would have kept a clean sheet because although Coventry had their moments, I never really felt like they were taking us apart. They were just basically feeding off what we did. You know, it almost, you know, any of our players at times could have been their man of the match because we were more dangerous to ourselves than they were to us. And they're not a bad side. I don't think they're anything like as good as they were last season. You know, the two they left Hamer and Gyökeres are just such good players that, you know, they didn't look as good as last season. I think a point at Coventry is not a bad point, but it is when you've led 3 times. And it is when you can see 3 goals like that. So in terms of defending, after the game, I asked Ishmael, you know, do you think the way you want to play is going to cause this sort of thing where, you know, Hoyt, I asked him, you know, Hoyt in that position would normally have just stumped it 40 yards down the pitch and we'd have all moved up to the halfway line. But I know from talking to the players that that's what they're told not to do. They're told to keep in possession. And he said, yeah, it does cause a risk, and that is the way I want to play. And if players make mistakes playing the way I asked them to, then, you know, I'll hold my hands up, and there'll be more mistakes. But his belief is, you know, if you're going to learn the way he wants to play, you will make mistakes. And the key thing is you get them out of the way, you learn from them, you don't make the same mistake again. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do watch it sometimes, and I'm a fan like everybody else. You sit there and you wince when we're playing triangles with the goalkeeper 35 yards from goal. But that's their job. They're trained to do it. They do it in the week. They haven't done it before this season. We're 5 games in. Hopefully, you know, when they come back, they're even better at it. And by the end of the season, we never knew what the problem was. But yes, yesterday just was all the things that you thought might ever go wrong went wrong. And most of them in the second goal. But yeah, it wasn't a good day defensively. Far too many mistakes.
Go on, Sam.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic game. Good to be back, by the way. Apologies about that. All the Wi-Fi on my road just crashed simultaneously. So I'm on my phone hotspot now, so hoping it holds up. Apologies if it dips out again. I thought it was a fantastic game of football, to be honest with you. And compared to what we got last season, where, you know, even when Watford were winning games, I just thought it was dull. No one really enjoyed being there. I thought it was end to end. It was really entertaining. And obviously we want Watford to win. That's ultimately why we go to games. But aside from the defensive errors, I thought it was entertaining. I thought we looked dangerous. And I think we saw a new dynamic to Watford that we haven't seen in a while. I thought Mateus Martins looked really, really dangerous. I think Tom Ince looked fantastic for his first start of the season. The new striker, Rajovic, as well, fantastic, 2 goals. I think might be a bit harsh, but I think there's elements of his game that could still be improved, particularly off the ball. I think he needs to be a lot more aggressive in 50-50 tackles, but if a striker scoring 2 goals, can't really complain. I thought Tondele Bashiru was excellent. I thought Imran Louza had a good game. I just think you nailed it there, Andrew. I think going forward, we were great, but defensively, it was just an absolute shambles. I think everyone across that back line, bar parts of Ken Semmers' game, which I thought he still did well. I thought Ryan Andrews didn't have the best game. I didn't think Sierralta had the best game. Porteous and Hoot, we've spoken about already. But on the whole, I was just really, really happy with what I saw. I think we're going in the right direction, but it's a case now that we have to start converting these good performances into wins, because I said this to Charlie earlier, that ultimately if we lose against Birmingham, we could be in the relegation zone. And I know it's very early days in the season, but good performances ultimately won't get us very far if we don't start defending well, scoring goals, and ultimately getting 3 points on the board every other week or so, or every week even better.
One thing I would say, I don't not vehemently disagree. I can't enjoy a game if Watford don't win. I can appreciate it was entertaining. I mean, if you'd have been there and you didn't support either team, you've had a cracker for your money. But for me, you know, I can never really go home and think, yeah, that was a great day out, how entertaining, if we haven't won. I'm not saying I want us to win 1-0 and play absolute drudge every week, but if we're going to play entertaining football, and we do, and it's going to be entertaining to watch, then it can only be fully entertaining and enjoyable if we win.
I see your point there.
Perhaps I'm being a bit harsh, but
yeah,
you know, I wasn't, you know, sort of down after yesterday. I try not to let results take me either way, but I think if you're going to say I enjoy a game, then it has to be 3 points. I mean, if we'd been 3-0 down and came back to draw 3-3 and taken a point, I say, yeah, well, that's enjoyable, but it's particularly hard to enjoy a non-win, even more so when you led 3 times. You know, if you're away from home, you lead 3 times, you should win the game. You should be able to see that out. So I take your point. It was entertaining. It was probably a fun watch. But, you know, if you're there in yellow or, you know, you're covering the team, then really you want to win for it to be enjoyable.
I see your point there, and I don't think it was harsh because I think there were frustrating elements. We'll come on to that a bit more. I think an element of me saying I enjoy it was it's a consequence of what I've seen over the last 18 months, 2 years from Watford.
Yeah.
I'm accepting that this is a process, and I think previously we would have seen Watford go 1-0 up, 2-1 up, and then crumble when a team equalises and lose 3-2, 4-2, 5-1, whatever.
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. There was so much about yesterday that was completely at odds with everything we saw last season. You know,
yeah.
Last season, had we conceded that second goal to make it 2-2, we'd probably gone on and lost 4-2. You know, we showed a lot of spirit, a lot of character. It's far more entertaining to watch. You feel like there's a shape and you can understand what the players are trying to do. I love all that. I love the fact that we scored 3 goals. We've got a number 9 in the old number 9 mould. You know, we've got some homegrown players in there. I love all that too. But what I can't enjoy is not winning. And I take all the pluses and all the positives. But while we're sitting 18th and we're not winning games, the most I can agree it was entertaining. I can't enjoy it. You know, I enjoy. Well, I go to watch Watford and cover Watford to win. And hopefully they can do both, be entertaining and win. But I can't properly enjoy something that doesn't end with 3 points, or certainly doesn't see us conceding 3 stupid goals and giving the lead away 3 times.
Andrew, what are your expectations this season for this team then?
Oh, well, I'm not going to duck the answer at all. I mean, maybe I'll flip it around. I don't think we're going to be relegation fodder. And I know a lot of people on social media are saying with the squad we've got and the way we're going to play and the mistakes we make, we're going to be in trouble. I don't believe that, because I think there's comfortably 8 teams worse than us, even if we play badly. So if you put away the fact that I don't think we're going to go down, similarly, I just don't think we're going to be good enough to creep into the top 6. I think there's 6 teams better than us. As things stand, if we click and we play the way that the coach wants and the players stay fit, and that's a big if, and, you know, yesterday we turned that sort of performance into a 3-1 win rather than a 3-3 draw, then, you know, top 10. But we'd have to do even more than that to be top 6, because I think the league this season is so. I mean, you look at yesterday, Leicester losing at home, Middlesbrough are struggling, you know, Southampton are getting done for 5. There's not one standout team. We're not going to have a Burnley, I don't think. We're not going to have a Sheffield United. And within that, then you're going to have to, when you play well, you're going to have to take points. And we played well yesterday and we only got 1. And I think that's going to be the key to it, is when we play well, we've got to win. Because as we saw yesterday, when we don't play so well in periods, we're going to give goals away. I don't know if there's a halfway house for us, because in the 2 or 3 games before, we didn't score, but we looked really tight at the back. Yesterday, we looked like we could score going forward regularly, but we're handing them back at the other end. So I suppose my expectation is, I thought mid-table at the start of the season. I thought, you know, maybe 11, 12, somewhere around there. I don't think we're bad enough to be in the bottom 6. I don't think we're good enough to be in the top 6. What I would really like is us at the end of the season to be looking a lot better than we do now in the way we play, with players that understand it and aren't making so many mistakes. And if we are, and we're anywhere near the top with, you know, I know 8 or 10 games to go, we might be in with a chance. But after last season, which was so bad, and so much change over the summer, not just in terms of players, but in style of play and a new manager and everything else, I think, I hate using this word patience, but you're going to have a little bit of it, because you can't go through that amount of change and expect to come out of it the other side, you're free flowing. And that's on and off the pitch. Things are very different. You know, I know some of the things that are very different. The training times have changed slightly. What they do before training has changed. It's a whole cultural reset for anyone who was at the club. And then on the pitch, you know, we're playing football unlike anything we've played, in a formation unlike anything we've played for years. So it is a lot of change. I think we'll be all right. I'm pretty confident we will, but I just don't think we're going to be anything more than sort of mid-table, maybe upper mid-table.
Yeah, that's why for me, I kind of disagree with you in the sense of, wanting to have the win and not being happy with winning. Like we said, the context of the last 2 seasons, and the fact that now we put in, I think, 90 minutes and 45 minutes of really good performances for a team that is pretty new. The coaches come in. I was with a Coventry mate yesterday, and they were moaning, saying they've got rid of 11 and they've brought in like 8. And I was like, we've got rid of 20 and brought in 5 or 6. So I think to see that action on the pitch and to see him delivering it so early, we knew the mistakes were going to happen, but I was really pleased with what I saw yesterday, those individual mistakes.
All I'd say is, Charlie, I agree with you. It is a step forward, but we don't really want to be sitting in March and April talking about games that were really enjoyable and we haven't won them. Because if we are, then we will be around the bottom 6. That is the problem. I'm delighted the way we're playing football, and it's a real breath of fresh air compared to last season. But if we're still sitting here the other side of Christmas and we're saying, well, wasn't that a cracking game, really entertaining? We lost 3-2. Well, what a great game that was. We drew 0-0. It's not going to get us anywhere, and we're going to be in the mire. So I agree, more entertaining, more about it, looks better. But, there's no column on the league table for entertainment or better. It's literally goals scored, goals against, and points. And unless we score more than we let in and get lots of points, then we will be doing what some people think we might do, and that's scrambling against relegation. So I'm just trying to, I don't want to be smart after the event. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's lovely at the moment, I'll join it. And then in 3 or 4 months' time, we've not improved the results, but we're still playing lovely football. Because, as I said, there's no column on the league table for that. We've got to get results. And if we're not getting them, and if we're still playing the way we are, then, you're looking at the coach and saying, well, you might have to park what we're trying to do just to get some points on the board. Because you look at the games we've had, 5 points from those 5 games. I think most of us would have expected a bit more than that, especially with 3 of them being at home. And now we've got 2 home games coming up. So that's 5 out of the first 7 at home. That's, you'd be thinking you've got to make double figures. And we're going to need to win both those home games now to reach double figures out of the first 7 games with 5 of them at home, because that means that at some point we're going to be playing a lot of away games, January. Results are key. As I say, I think you're right. It was thoroughly entertaining football for the neutral. We play a lot better, but it'd be no good if we're sitting here doing this in February, March time, and we're, drawing games and losing games, but looking good. Then you're in trouble.
Yeah, we shall see. We need those results. You're correct. Before we get on to the transfer window, Sam put out a tweet before, which I thought would be good to kind of have a look and highlight some things from the first 5 games. So one of the points that we've asked questions is, who do we think's been the most impressive player in the first 5 games, Sam?
Yeah, I said I would have said Wesley Hu up until yesterday, because there were quite a few players I think were quite neck and neck with it all. I've been impressed with Hu. I've been impressed with Ryan Andrews, but I'm going to give it to Mateus Martins, simply because I think his end product does need work on. The game against Blackburn particularly, and also against, I think it was Stoke, there were some times where he had opportunities to pass it or even shoot, and he picked the wrong decision. But I thought yesterday he just looked so good, so sharp, so bright every time he had it. There were shades of, I think, Richarlison when we first bought him in, and also shades of Cucho Hernandez as well, when he was really on it a couple of years ago as well. So I've been really impressed by Martins. I think he looks like a completely different player to the one we saw last season, where not only was his decision making indecisive, but he wasn't showing the electric pace that he's got as well, and the skill. So I've been really impressed by him, and I think it's the reason I've given it to him as the most impressive is because I think even over the 5 games we've played so far, I think there's been a gradual improvement as well within his game.
Andrew, who's impressed you the most this season?
It's a tricky one. I take your point about Hu having a poor game yesterday, but I thought he had, 4 good games before that, and put his clanger to one side yesterday. He wasn't that bad. So he would be up there for me. I just think in the way that we play, he's going to be, a key to it. And that's why I was worried at the end of last week that we didn't sign another left-footed centre-half, because we don't really have the natural cover there. I think you're right to put Martins. It's funny though, isn't it? Because Martins up until yesterday wouldn't have come onto my radar, because although he played well, the end product was awful. I think he'd had something like 12 shots at goal over the 4 games and hit the target twice. And And he'd resorted against Blackburn to shoot him from ridiculous distances, 30, 35 yards. But yesterday was more like it. And it was interesting after the game that Ishmael said that when they'd watched Coventry, they noticed that at home, they really pushed the wing-backs on. So they were keen in transition to get into the gaps that were left behind them. So that's why as soon as they got the ball, they were looking for Martins because they knew he'd have space. So I thought it was a very clever piece of homework. And he also pointed out that when Espria came on, they did the same on the right. They pushed Espria on. I think Martins was great yesterday. You're right. He's got to get his head up sometimes. And as Tom Ince did in the first half, where Tom Ince got the ball, he could have had a shot from a stupid angle, but he rolled it square. Rajovic scores. In that moment, the assist was every bit as good as the finish. What I think is interesting with Martins is I remember watching him for the under-21s a couple of times, where obviously, he's playing a grade below first-team football there, but he was played not as a winger. So last season, he was asked in the first team to pretty much play out wide and hug the touchline. In the under-21s, particularly in a game against Peterborough, where we scored 3, he played more as he is now as sort of one of 3 up front. And he had the freedom to go either way. And I mean, he terrorised a bunch of kids for Peterborough, which, all right, that's not the greatest endorsement. But I remember thinking, maybe we're not playing him the right way. Maybe he's not the other-sided Ismail Assar. Assar was an out-and-out wide man. And I think Martins is more of a through the middle. He's maybe not a number 9, but he could probably play off a number 9, or as he is doing now, playing as a more narrow forward 3. So I think over the piece, I'd agree with you on Martins. I think Martins is probably the person that has impressed me most in terms of the improvement and the way he's playing from last season. But honourable mention for Wes Hoot, because he's bailed us out a few times at the back when things haven't gone right.
Even yesterday, at the end of the first half, they had a really good opportunity where they almost got a strike and goal, and Wesley Hoot did a goal-saving tackle. So, I think he deserves a big shout. Sam, who do you want to see a bit more from? Who maybe has disappointed you or you expected a bit more from?
Yeah, I think it's been difficult. This answer was a difficult one because I think there's been a lot of players in there who I think have been. I don't think anyone's been absolutely disastrous in there, which I think is a good sign, in my opinion. But also there are a few players in there who I still think could go up a few gears, and one of them is Ryan Porteous, I think, and like Wesley Hoot, I mean, I think there has been moments where he has been really, really good, made some good blocks again yesterday, has made some good blocks throughout the season. But I think at times he has looked a tiny bit rash.
You talk about all season or just yesterday? Because I think he's been pretty good.
All season, I think there's moments where he's rash where it hasn't necessarily cost us a goal, but there were times where he's slid in or lunged in for tackles and missed it completely. And I think he needs to iron that out of his game. We've spoken about it previously on the channel, Charlie, where I think at some point his body, I think the Ryan Porteous we all love is the one that's really aggressive and on the front foot. But I think at times it looks like his body might take a few knocks from how hard he goes into challenges. And I think yesterday he looked really, really shaky throughout the 90 minutes. And I think he's a really good player. And the reason why I want to see a bit more from him is because I think he could be an integral part of this Watford team, as we have seen at points so far this season. So if he can knock it up a few more gears, I think we will look a lot better at the back.
I think that's harsh. I think he's been good this season. Yesterday, I think that penalty decision might have flustered him a bit, and I did think he had one of his worst games for us. Even the final goal, I just think even take him out, maybe not take the red card, but to try and buy a foul in that position was costly. But I think Porto's been good. We highlighted him last week against Blackburn, how good he was defensively. So, Andrew, is there any other player who you think you expected a bit more from?
Yeah, I'm probably, because I know he's a fan favourite and I'm probably going to get booed for it, but I don't think Ken Semmers had the greatest start to the season. And the reason I say that is if everyone's fit and Jamal Lewis turns out to be the first choice left back, I don't see where Ken gets in the team on performances at the moment, because I couldn't pick him ahead of Matthias Martins and I couldn't put him out on the right ahead of Espria. I just don't quite see where he fits. It's sad because I think he's a real wholehearted, committed club man, but he's almost turned into a bit of a jack of all trades because, there's someone better in each of the position he plays. And he hasn't done anything wrong, but he hasn't done anything spectacular either. He's just filled a shirt. And, I think there's more to come from him. I think, he can do more. And it may be that we see more of him, because when we were in the Championship, we've been in the Championship a lot recently, when we came down and went back up that season, I thought he looked really good. And, you thought, he can make a mark at this level. I think he struggles when you go up a step and play in the Premier League, but he just hasn't done it for me this season. He's, I say it's not like he's cost us anything. It's just that I can't see, when everybody's fit, what Ken has done that you'd pick him ahead of other people in the positions that he plays.
Yeah, I agree. He did put a really good ball in for the first goal, kind of daisy cutter through to Tom Ince for that pre-assist.
Yeah, everybody makes the odd contribution, and everybody has their moments, in the same way that we can't write off Porteous because he had a bad game yesterday. But if you're saying to me, over the 5 league games, 1 cup game, who has not really hit the heights, then I think Ken, because if we're picking out an individual cross, then that sort of suggests he hasn't done much on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Ollie, who would you go for?
Who would I go for? Probably Yasser Asprilla, Yasser Asprilla. Just because I could see how much ability he has. And I think he's just found it difficult. Blackburn, he started, didn't he, his first game, and I think he had the opportunity maybe to do a bit more and make better decisions, whether to lay it off and shoot a bit earlier. But I just think he's probably one of the most talented players in the squad, so I'm just expecting a bit more from him. I feel like he does better coming off the bench, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Yeah, yesterday I thought he was really lively when he came on. I'm not sure if that shot's going in that the keeper palmed over, but yeah, just because I know how good he is, I'm just maybe expecting a bit more. But obviously, he's still.
I see where you're coming from on him. I think one thing we have to remember is that, what is he? Just over a year in this country playing for us. Doesn't really speak the language, still young, no excuses, but just things to factor in. But João Pedro didn't come to life until at least a year, 18 months into his time here. Yasser still looks like he's, the shirt's on a hanger. He's still quite spindly. He's got a lot of growing to do. I remember Slaven Bilic, sounds like a terrible name drop, Slaven Bilic saying to me that he thought that, we'd see the best of Asprilla after a season and a half of English football. So if that's the case, then early next year, we might start to see the best of him. I think you're right. At the moment, he's an impact player. He comes on, he does things that other players can't do. He's got tremendous skill. He's got the potential to be one of the best players, in our team and perhaps in the Championship. But I think we've got to give him a little bit of time. And also, he hasn't started games. So to judge him on that one Blackburn performance, I think where I do agree with you is that, the number of times he gets into the box and either doesn't get a shot away, or it's blocked, or his cross is blocked. Like a lot of players at Watford, you've got to get in product. We got it yesterday, but I remember there was a couple of chances late in the second half or Asprilla, and I think that was what Ismail was talking about. He got into the similar positions that Martins was getting into, and nothing came of it. And so he's got to deliver. There's got to be end product to all of the good stuff he does. But if I'm trusting, the former manager of Croatia, then let's see what he's like after Christmas.
Let's see. And last one on these questions so far. What do you think the best 90 minutes has been? Best performance throughout one game, Sam?
I've gone with Plymouth for this one. I was really impressed. I know it was 0-0, so I think I can guess Andrew's going to say that ultimately it can only be a complete performance if we win the game. But I think the 90 minutes as a whole, I've mitigated into the fact that I think QPR are a really poor team, albeit they have picked up since that Watford game, and they're now above us.
I was getting messages.
Yeah, they're now above us in the table, I believe. But I do think, though, that across 90 minutes against a really, really strong and good-looking Plymouth team, I think we really held our own, played well, but ultimately couldn't finish, which has been the story of a few games so far this season. So, yeah, I'll go with the Plymouth game.
Andrew?
I'll be predictable. QPR, we scored 4 goals. We didn't let any in. I don't care how poor the other team were. When there's often a tendency when someone beats somebody else comprehensively, it's because the other team were rubbish. I saw enough times that Man City beat us, and we weren't rubbish every time. They're just a good side. I thought we were good against QPR, and I think if we really needed to in the second half, we probably could have scored some more. But to get 4 before half time and get players scoring for the first time, the way we played, first performance under a new manager, and we won. So it had everything, it had goals, it had performance, it had result. So yeah, for me, QPR.
I have to agree. I hate QPR, so seeing that goal going after 30 seconds was a big relief. Very much enjoyed it. Still got the bruises. Let's talk about transfers, which obviously the window closed on Friday, and a lot of Watford fans were probably refreshing Twitter to see if we were going to sign another player, whether that was a left-sided centre-back or a holding midfielder, but nothing came of it. Let me just bring up the players that we did sign. Mileta Rajovic, Tom Ince, Reece Healy, Jake Livermore, Jamal Lewis, Georgie Chapfadetsky. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players in. And I'm not going to go through all the players that we let go because there was a lot. But obviously, João Pedro, Ismail Assar, the two big ones. Sam, how do you rate our summer transfer window?
Yeah, I think a few more players coming in would have been ideal. But I'm happy that the rebuild has begun ultimately. And obviously, we saw, as you said, about 20 players left the club. A lot of players, I think, left, and it's been overdue them leaving. The problem is, I think we've got a squad now where if a few injuries come in, I think we look a bit light. Particularly, if we have an injury crisis, anything close to what we had last year, then we're going to be looking at playing quite a few of the under 21s and throwing in some academy players in there right at the deep end. So we have to hope that that's not going to be the case. Valérien Ismaël has crafted a squad along with the recruitment team, Ben Manga, Helena Costa, Gino Pozzo as well, that he thinks is good enough according to what he says. Of course, behind the scenes, things might look a lot more different, but I'm just happy that the rebuild has begun. It's going to be a process that's going to take 2 or 3 transfer windows to get the replacements in. But I think a lot of the deadwood, if you want to call it that, has gone, and we can start looking ahead to the future.
Andrew, can you give us any kind of insight? You've obviously spoke to Val a lot, and throughout this window, 6 players in. Val's been saying that he seems very happy. He kind of wants a smaller squad. He wants to rebuild that culture. Do you think he's genuinely happy and he wants that tight-knit group, or do you think he would have liked a couple more bodies in?
Well, it's always impossible to know if what someone says to you is genuinely what they believe. So you can only take them at face value. What I would say is when Ismail says now that he's happy with the squad and the players that have been brought in, I find that more believable from stuff I know than when Rob Edwards said it 12 months ago. That's the only context I can put on it because, they both said the same thing. They were both happy. So the only context I can apply to it is things that, I said privately or conversation with other people. I don't think the current manager he's not lying, but I think he is relatively happy. I don't think he's fibbing. Rob maybe was being a little bit more economical with the truth because, I know there were players in positions that he wanted to bring in that we didn't get. And I know there were a number of players that we did get that he didn't know about or, they weren't players that he particularly signed off on. I think if you look at our transfer window in 2 halves, the outgoings, you got 9 out of 10. Yeah, brilliant. I think it'd be very hard to say, we should have kept him. I mean, obviously, you'd love to have kept João Pedro. No way was that happening. We need the money, so Ismail Assar was always going to go. I think we might turn out to be quite glad that we didn't lose Loser as well, because I think there were people who were sniffing around even a year ago, looking at Loser, and he's going to be a very good player, and it might happen again if we have a good half of the season. It happens in January, so we've kept hold of Loser. So I think the outgoings, yeah, you'd agree with all of them. Incomings, yeah, that's not anywhere near a 9 out of 10. It's sort of a 5 out of 10. Just looking at it from the outside. The manager, in my conversation with him, he's quite happy. He thinks that he's got what he wants. He said from the outset 2 players per position. I still think we've got a gap at left-sided centre-half, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. I do think it looks thin. We've already had a situation where I think we were away at Stoke where both our left backs were injured, although it turned out that Morris wasn't that bad. But at some point, we had no fit left backs and Ken Sema was going to be our left back. So it doesn't take much to scratch below the surface to find out, that you haven't got anything left. He genuinely, the manager, wants this small squad. He, when I've talked to him privately and I've asked him, no, this is what I want. This is what I said to the club when I came in. We wanted to get rid of the deadwood that you referred to. We wanted to get rid of people that didn't fit in with the culture and the mindset. I asked him about, would you like more players? And he used a lot of phrases I thought were very interesting. He talks about not signing a player for the sake of it. He said, I'm sure there's fans who would think, we should sign players, but do fans want me to sign players just to make fans happy, or do they want me to sign players that I think are going to improve the squad and fit in with what we want? He talked about the availability of some players that, in particular positions. So left-footed players are hard to come by. Left-footed centre-halves are hard to come by. I think I typed something on during the blog, and I maybe didn't type it in the best way, but he said he turned down a couple of players in the last week. I mean, I think he was probably talking about a bit more than a week, but he was referring to, players who fitted the criteria. So left-footed centre-halves. I'm sure it's a bit like playing Football Manager. There's other numbers that you look for. And then you look deeper, and he said, well, one of the players I was offered was nearly 34. And he said, although in his prime, he could do exactly what I would have wanted him to do, his prime was probably 5 years ago, and now he wouldn't be up to it. He said the other player was much younger, a teenager, real prospect, but only 5'10". He said, I can't replace Wes Hoyt with a 5'10" player and play the same way. So he said, then do I go and sign one of those to appease people, knowing that I don't really want the player and I'm going to struggle to use them, or do I go with what I've got? And he certainly didn't leave it to the last minute. It wasn't like we got down to last Friday and it was right, just give me some names. They've been looking a whole summer, but right from the outset, right from the end of last season, I was told, 6 or 7 new players. There'll be a load going out, 6 or 7 coming in. So once we got to the sort of figure you're talking about, and we got to the last week of the transfer window, I wasn't expecting there to suddenly be a rush of new blood. I did think, and I hope we don't pay for not signing a left-sided defender, but if there wasn't one that was available that the manager thought would fit in terms of skill, ability, personality, attitude, then all we can do is trust him. It's his neck on the line. If by the middle of October, we're playing someone who's 19 in centre of defence because we've got nothing else left, then that'll be questions that will be asked then. And, I'll ask him that. As I said, I asked him on Friday and he was quite adamant, I just don't want to sign players for the sake of signing a player. But I do worry a little bit about the injuries. The only thing I did ask him about that, and I said, look, last season, there was a time where we had, I think it was 15 players unavailable, and a lot of them were muscle injuries, and he wasn't sort of derogatory towards previous coaches, but he said, in my opinion, the injuries you had last season were down to fitness. They weren't ready for games, and that goes right back to pre-season and the way they were prepared. And he said that's why this summer we spent 7 weeks at the training ground. We didn't play many public games. We did a lot of stuff in private, and by the time the season started, we were pretty much where I thought we needed to be in terms of preparedness to play. He said, then if you do that, then you're less likely to suffer some of the injuries that we suffered last season. So I asked about Standout, and he said, well, yeah, there's always going to be someone who will pick up an injury. He said, but in his opinion, the fact that Standout has come back so quickly is because he was fitter before we started, if that makes sense. So, it wasn't like he was coming into the season 70% ready. He was 95% ready. So that when he did pick an injury, he went down to 70%, but quickly got back up again. So in the manager's view, the work that's been done during the pre-season will, number one, reduce the amount of injuries, and number two, mean that they're out for shorter times when they are out. But of course, if you take out both people in one position, that's not going to help much. And only having one left-footed centre-back is the one thing. I don't lose sleep over it because football's not that important. But if I was having one thing that I'm thinking, okay, between now and January, where can I see there being a problem? It would be if Wes Hoot fell down a hole, because when I asked Ishmael what he would do, he said, well, you've got Pollock. Well, there's another right-sided centre-half who I think is a very good player, but really wouldn't be fair on him to suddenly ask him to play on the left-side defence. Then it was, well, Jake Livermore can play there. Well, I'm not personally convinced yet that Jake Livermore is on the same level, as Ishmael puts it, as other players in terms of fitness and readiness. And, he is. It's interesting that Ishmael said he didn't really want to sign a 33, 34-year-old. And yet, if we had to, we'd be putting a 33-34-year-old in at centre-half if we were to get an injury. So that's, if I'm being critical, I think maybe 1 or 2 more bodies. But I've asked the manager, he's adamant. There's only sometimes you can ask him before you realise that he either really believes it or he's a massively convincing liar. And he said the same privately as he said publicly, which hasn't always been the case with the previous 3 managers that I've worked with. Not because they want to mislead anybody, but sometimes you have to be political in your answers and say what, is a more balanced view. It's no good Rob Edwards coming out last year and saying, well, we're doomed because we didn't get what I want, because we all know how that's going to end. Only one person's going to win that argument. Rob tried to work with what he'd got. It didn't work. He got the sack, and I don't think Ishmael's in quite the same position. He genuinely seems a lot happier. And he feels that the squad we've got, the size it is going to be fine. And as he said, if it goes wrong, it's on him.
Sam, what do you make of that? What Andrew, that was really good insight, especially kind of Val wanting that smaller squad. And secondly, which signings are you excited about? Who's the ones that kind of caught your eye the most or think are going to have the biggest impact this season?
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear that the manager is happy to have that smaller, more intimate squad. It will allow him to potentially work closer with them one-to-one as well. He doesn't have to worry about so many moving parts in the squad. I always think back, Andrew, to I think one of your stories that you wrote where under Roy Hodgson, he had players who, if they were surplus to requirements in training, they just go home. And ultimately, that's not a healthy culture to have at a football club. So it's good to hear having that more intimate squad. Obviously, the problems come with injuries, as Andrew spoke about there. But in terms of the signings who have come in, I'm really excited to see more of Rajovic. Like I said, I think there are still some parts to his game that I think need working on from what I saw yesterday. But if a striker's putting the ball in the back of the net twice, ultimately you can't be too critical and complaining. It was 2 poachers finishes, right place, right time, where he was really smart with his movement and found himself.
He could have had a hat trick, that header at the end as well.
Yeah, he probably should have done better with that as well for someone of his size. I think off the ball, he could be a bit more aggressive in 50-50 challenges and going a bit stronger at times. But I think that will probably come with time under working with Valerian Ismail. It's only been 10 days or something that he's been at the club.
To be honest, I wouldn't care if Rajovic did nothing bar score 2 goals every game.
That's true.
I'm not expecting him to do that, but I remember when I left Watford and worked at Charlton, we had Darren Bent. We signed him from Ipswich, and he scored freely for Charlton, but you could never remember anything else he did. He'd pop up, score 2, we'd win 2-1, and you'd look back on it and you think, I don't remember him doing anything barring scoring the 2 goals. I suppose that's what they're paid for, isn't it, really? I mean, if you've got a goalkeeper who makes 3 worldy saves and you win 1-0, doesn't matter what they did in the rest of the game, they've won you the game. So I know what you're saying. There are elements of his game that could improve, but at our level, we're not going to sign Erling Haaland, who not only scores 50 goals a season, but sets up another 20 and, scares the crap out of everybody in defence. So we have to be relative and say, well, we've got a bloke who scored 2 yesterday, didn't do much else. But if he averages a goal a game even this season, what a signing for the money we pay.
Of course, that was me being hypercritical, I think. I mean, obviously, I'm delighted, and I wouldn't change anything about his performance yesterday other than what I mentioned now. I just think in the future with what Ismail wants, I think there were particularly opportunities where Coventry were playing out the back that I think we could have really capitalised if he was perhaps a bit more aggressive in his press. But again, that's just me being...
I think it's interesting because I think what he lacks is what Bayo's good at. Bayo's very good at running around and chasing people. He did it particularly well for the 3rd goal yesterday. What he's not so good at is the bit that Rajovic is good at, which is sticking the ball in the net and being a presence. You combine Bayo's sort of running around, tracking, chasing, alertness with Rajovic's size, physicality, and goal scoring, and you're getting near to a Premiership player. But we're in the Championship. One thing I didn't mention there that I thought was interesting in the conversation I had with Ishmael at the end of last week, when he talked about the thin squad, was he didn't like being at clubs where you had 4th and 5th choice players. So he said, I hate it when, you look at it, you think, well, I've got 5 right backs, because he said, basically the 4th and 5th choice right back are just drawing a wage because they know that, you're going to have a bus crash before they get in. So, he said, and then I'm looking around and thinking, I've got 40 players here and 10 of them are probably never even going to travel with me on the team bus. So in his view, it means that each of the 2 in each position, number 1, they know they've got a chance of playing because they're only either one injury or one bad performance or one good training session away from being in the team. But it also means they can't relax. So it's not like they can just coast along and go, well, I don't really need to put it in training because I know I'm not the first choice and I'm not even the second choice. So we've been guilty of that in the past. As you pointed out, under Roy Hodgson, I remember Dan Gosling saying that in the interview, that there would be training sessions where there would be excess defenders and they'd go off and kick a ball around until one of them was needed. That's not healthy, and you might be able to get away with that at Chelsea and Man City because you've got the money to pay for blokes just to be cones, but we haven't got that. And it is a very, very different approach to the one that's been applied by Watford for many, many years. And maybe just because we've been doing it that way for many years, we might have been doing it wrong. I mean, it might have been better if we'd had a more competitive, slimmer squad. Having said all that, I do understand why fans are nervous because I keep coming back to it. One injury to Wes Hoyt or, 2 injuries in any other position, and you're immediately dipping into the under-21s. And you wouldn't want to be doing that in the middle of winter when suspensions and everything else build up. So we really are putting well, ask Matthew Pollock about Millwall away. That's not a place you want to go to make your first appearance. We really are putting our faith in a completely different way of doing things and a completely different style of football under a manager who's very different to anything else that we've had for a while. At the moment, results, as I keep saying, they're not the best. I agree, performances are better. If we can marry up results to performances, then my prediction that we won't be near the bottom 6 at all looks pretty safe. If we don't marry the results with the performances and we get a lot of injuries and we're, ticking off days until January comes around, then this could be messy. So we just got to hope that what he's doing is right and is going to work out the way he thinks it will.
Andrew, we're going to wrap up shortly, but one thing that fans are kind of confused about, so I don't know if you've got any insight into, is one of our signings, Reece Healey. I'm not even sure if he was on the bench yesterday, but hasn't featured a lot. Came on against Stevenage. Everyone kind of knows what Val says, but what's Val said about him? Is he fit? Why have we not seen more of him?
Well, I think now that we've got a number 9 and looking at the way Ishmael sort of picks his 18 on a match day, he tends to go with a striker on the pitch, another one on the bench. So if we've got 3 strikers, then one's probably not going to make it onto the bench. And I guess that's even less likely at away games where he might want an extra defensive body or an extra midfielder. That being said, it does seem strange that Healey was fit enough to play a half at Stevenage, but not fit enough for league games. And he's, the head coach has been asked this in press conferences quite a few times, and I've talked to him about it. And he's very consistent in his message in that it's not that Healey isn't fit. He's fit to train, he's fit to play. In his mind, Healey hasn't shown him, Ishmael, the confidence in the knee that he injured that would allow him to put him in the team and think that he was ready to play. Now, obviously, the first pushback on that is, well, if you don't ever put him on the pitch, how will you know if he's confident? But I suppose that comes back to him seeing Reece Healey 6 times a week for a few hours every day and seeing what he does on the training pitch. I don't believe there's anything more to it than that. The only thing that, and this isn't based on anything that anyone's told me, the only thing I look at is that Healey arrived very quickly in the summer. He was our first summer sign. It was almost instantly. And I wonder whether that was a signing that was agreed or lined up before we even knew who the next head coach was going to be. Because on the face of it, it's a sort of a typical Watford signing. We're taking someone who has been very good at a decent level, but has got some sort of problem, whether it's, in this case, injury or whatever. And potentially, if they get him good again, then signing him on a free and selling him 2 years down the road for a couple of million is really good business. So it's a typical Watford signing. And that's the only doubt in my mind. And I've not asked anybody, and I probably will at some point, but it just felt to me like Healey arrived so quickly, it couldn't possibly been influenced by Ishmael. So did Ishmael arrive and oh, by the way, we've got a new bloke here, hope he fits in. Did they sign Healey with the style of play that Ishmael had in mind? I don't know, but he doesn't seem to fit in to what Ishmael does. He likes a big, solid number 9. And Healey's not really that. but then Healy's not another Matthias Martins or a Tom Ince. He's not really a sort of a wide player who could tuck in and make a forward three. So, yeah, it is a strange one. Not every transfer works. And I say the one thing I will try and find out, if I ever do, is, was that an Ismail signing, or was he signed before Ismail came simply because it was too good to turn down? I don't know.
Sam, what do you feel about Reece Healy?
It's a difficult one because, I mean, his only contribution at the moment was missing that penalty in the shootout away at Stevenage. Look, I'm fully behind the manager, and like Andrew said earlier, often what they say is a bit more political in the public compared to what's going on behind the scenes. But I'm willing to hopefully back Ismail's judgment. Like to hope that Reece Healy can get a bit more confident when in training and we can see him, because from what we heard about him, and I don't know, I know it's a highlight reel of YouTube or whatever, he does seem to be someone who can finish, and someone who can offer us something a bit. I know you mentioned there, Andrew, in terms of Rajovic and Bayo having different qualities, but I think Healy, in a way, has elements of both of their games in his game. So he could offer us something different that both Bayo and Rajovic almost combined can offer. So that if he can get more confident in training, then it'll be great to see him. It's a bit of a concern that we haven't seen him yet, and I probably agree with Andrew that it probably wasn't an Ismail signing as well. So I think only time will tell with that, and perhaps if he doesn't get minutes in January, we could see him going out the door as well.
One thing I thought was interesting yesterday, quickly on Healy, was that at the end of the game we finished up playing 3-5-2 with Bayo alongside Rajovic. Now, if that is something that Ismail has in his locker for occasions when it might suit him, then you could see Healy being an option there, playing the Bayo role or supporting whichever one of the two number 9s on the pitch. But to your point, Sam, I just don't think the way we play now, I can't see Healy doing the job that Rajovic is doing. I just don't see it. I don't see he's going to hold the ball up and do what he does. So either we have to play slightly differently, or we're going to have to switch as we did towards the end of the game. I mean, it would be great if Healy's sitting on the bench and we go 3-5-2 and you stick him up top alongside a big bloke. I think that would really work. But at the moment, don't see him as being a line leader.
No. But I think more what I meant was that an element of Rajovic's game, I think, is that he seems to be an instinctive finisher based on what we saw yesterday. And Healy, supposedly from what I read from his time in France and also a couple of clubs in England, is he seems to be that instinctive finisher as well. He also seems to be someone who perhaps has a bit more pace and someone who has a bit more has pressing a bit more like Bayo as well. So I more mean that in terms of what you said, that Rajovic offers something and Bayo offers something. I think he sort of could be somewhere in between that, although he doesn't have everything that both of those players have. He's more of a mixture of the two. Good
stuff. Right, let's wrap things up. Sam, do we need to do anything else? Do we need to do our predictions for Birmingham, or is that too far in the future?
It is a bit far in the future, I think. How many internationals do Watford have going out? Porteous has gone out with Scotland.
I think there's 6.
Seems Sema with Sweden.
Sema, Backman, Porteous, Ryan Andrews will be in the under 20 squad. Chakfadadza, I think, goes away with Georgia. Kayambe with is he Congolese?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I got to 6 yesterday of players that would be in first team contention. Then obviously you've got younger players like Jonathan McCauley and George Abbott, and the likes of those will go away with the younger international teams. But I think I got to 6 yesterday.
Okay, Sam, what are you doing on the international break?
It's been a great start to the season, but it'll be nice to have a couple of weeks off. Heading out to Prague this week as well, which should be nice, which should be good, and then moving back to Birmingham as well, just before the Birmingham at home game. So, yeah, looking forward to the break, and also hoping that Val can work on the squad during the time off. I think the Golden Girls will also still be in action during the international break. So hopefully be able to catch their games as well, which should be a nice filler. But yeah, also Andrew, just wanted to thank you as well for brilliant coverage over the summer, as well as always with the transfer news or the lack of rumours as well, and also for your start to the season as well, and your Curry reviews as well, which are always excellent.
Well, Curry reviews just a sideline. That's just a personal pleasure. But no, I love doing it. And actually, I'm having some time off this week. Although you might not notice it because I've written a load of stuff in advance that will sort of drip out during the week. And I've interviewed one of the players that I haven't spoken to before from the 98, 99, 2000 era, who was really good fun. That's a really quite funny interview, that one. But yeah, I'm having a few days off, and then I'll be back, I suppose, next Sunday. The women are away at Charlton, so I'll either find some way to watch that or go down there if I can.
Good stuff. Yeah. On a side note, the women played today. They lost 3-2 to, is it London City Lionesses, but they're one of the favourites to win the league, and I thought they were brilliant all game.
They were very, very unlucky. A point was the least they deserved. On another day, they win that game. It was actually, it sort of mirrored what we saw yesterday a little bit. They switched off for a period and went from 1-0 up to 3-1 down, and then suddenly regained it. But you know, I thought they played really good football. They're really good to watch. And, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, women's football is not something they want to go and watch. But if you're sort of undecided, I'd go down the next home game and have a look, because the standard of football is really, really high.
And the style of play that Damon's got playing is really, really nice to watch. So
it's really, really good to watch. So yeah, you know, it would be lovely, because there's a lot of good people working very hard behind the scenes on the Watford women team. You know, they're not full time. I think every team bar one other in the Championship is full time. So you know, we're very much on the lopsided end of an uneven playing field there, and yet we're still holding our own. So the best thing that people can do if they want to see women's football thrive at Watford is to get down and support them.
And you have to make sure to watch our new Watford Women's Show, which Sam did midweek with Poppy Wilson and Ali Polish, which is really good fun. So make sure you check that video out. On the international break, if you have got nothing to do, make sure you get down to the Mad Squirrel, where they'll be showing the Rugby World Cup, and obviously get a taster of all their nice craft beers. We're going to be down there for the West Brom game, doing our first post-match pint. So really looking forward to that and bring you more content from the Mad Squirrel. So we'll wrap things up there. Thanks, Andrew, for joining. Sam, thank you. Your Wi-Fi held up just about, and you made me host, which
apologies about that. And Charlie, fantastic substitution appearance from you there as well.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't bore all the viewers, but thanks everyone for watching. Enjoy the break on the international break. We'll be back. We're thinking about doing a new video, Valball 2.0 explained. So thinking about doing that for the international break. I know Sam's got an idea, so I'm sure we'll have something going on. Make sure to leave a like on this video, hit subscribe if you're not already, and we'll see you soon. Up the Hornets.